Alright, let's do this. I was supposed to do a review of Jackbox 2, but I couldn't stop playing Fall Guys, so instead I ranked the game's current 24 maps from worst to best. This is obviously an opinionated piece, yada yada yada. Let's go. 24. Egg Scramble. 3 teams. Keep the most eggs in your team's basket. Team with the least amount of eggs by the end gets eliminated. I was thinking long and hard about which one of these rounds was the absolute worst, and I honestly think it's Egg Scramble. This seems like a pretty popular opinion as well. Well, unless you're IGN, who apparently ranked Egg Scramble as the 5th best game. What? Honestly, Egg Scramble isn't even the most RNG heavy or isn't even the most unfair. The real reason I think it's the worst, and the reason I assume most other people are partial to that opinion, is because the game is extremely obnoxious. Most rounds devolve into everybody ganging on a certain color since there's only one losing team. And let me tell you, being a part of the team being completely bodied is not a good time. I mean, in any team game really, but especially this one. 23. Hoarders. Fundamentally, Hoarders is just Egg Scramble with soccer balls. 3 teams. Try to keep the most soccer balls in your team's area to ensure victory. The losing team is pretty much up in the air with this one, given how constantly the scores are shifting. I don't know, it feels hard to contribute to your team when you got 10 people jumping at the same ball simultaneously. Because of that, it's a little less skill-based than Egg Scramble, but I'd still rather kick a ball than be dogpiled because I decided to pick up a gold egg. 22. Oopsy Daisy. 3 teams. Jump through hoops that get lowered down the score for your team. It's kind of fun, but a little too luck-based because the hoop spawning positions are seemingly random. There's obviously set positions for them to spawn, but there's no way to know where the next one will be. I have won games because the hoops are all spawning in front of me, and likewise I have lost games because nothing would spawn in my area. If a hoop spawns up high, for instance, the person who was already randomly running up there will get it, but the hoop just as likely could have not spawned up there, and they could have wasted their time. If a hoop spawns next to someone, they're going to get it 9 out of 10 times. That 1 out of 10 only being if they really suck and mess it up. To be fair, I used to like this game a lot when I first played it because diving through a hoop is so satisfying. But if this concept was really going to work, they needed to have these hoops on a timer. Like, just make it so the hoops never move, but they won't give you points until a timer above it goes off. Then, once someone goes through the hoop and scores a point, reset the timer. Just an idea. But that format would allow players to plan things out, making the game less reliant on RNG, even if just slightly. 21. Tail Tag. So there are 3 different tail games. The goal is to grab someone else's tail, and to keep it until the timer hits 0. I don't think the tail games are inherently bad, but this one ranks fairly low for me, solely due to the map. I'm sure other people will back me up when I say the camera in Fall Guys is a bit jank at times. Tail Tag illustrates this problem better than any other map, I'd say. On the side of the map, if you try to hang out on this platform and look out, the camera will zoom in because it gets caught on the wall, leaving you completely blindsided if someone does come up there. Then in the bottom center, you can keep your tail down there for longer than you may think because it's so hard to see what's going on down there. But the fact you can even use a less than adequate camera to your advantage, a tool that should be just purely designed to simply let you have a viewing angle during the game. I don't think that's good design. A camera shouldn't be a bigger obstacle than the actual in-game obstacles. 20. Doordash. The round where who wins? Maybe you, I don't know. Doordash's problem is obvious enough. The whole round centers on you jumping through doors that may or may not be, in fact, not doors, and instead walls. At that point, it might seem the obvious solution is to hang back and wait for others to break the doors first, but even then, there is still a bit of randomness to contend with when it comes to the diving. The physics in Fall Guys can be a bit unpredictable, which can be pretty funny, don't get me wrong, but in Doordash, this supersedes humorous and just comes off as frustrating. There just isn't much skill in crossing your fingers hoping you come out the other side of 30 people jumping through a tight opening all at once. Doordash is definitely a map where I feel like I've learned absolutely nothing whenever I lose. I don't know, I guess I should have just been better at luck. 19. Perfect Match. There are 16 tiles that will flash certain fruits. You need to remember which one is which because when the monitor flashes a fruit, any tiles that were not that fruit will disappear. This is a cool idea for a round. There's a few things that hold it back, however. The most glaring being that it's really easy to cheat off other people, creating a game where you don't really have to memorize anything yourself. The 2 ways to fix this would be to A. Shorten the timer so you don't have as long to choose, or B. Make the 4x4 grid an 8x8 grid, or do both. I think the larger map would be good specifically because it would make it harder for players to cheat off you. The more spread out the players are, the less people you have immediate access to cheat off. 18. Jinxed. A 2-team game where players surrounded in pink smoke can grab other players to quote-unquote jinx them. The first team to get entirely jinxed gets eliminated. Another cool idea that unfortunately feels a bit unfair because you are almost entirely reliant on your team. You can be a god at jukes, but the second you're the last guy on your team that has not been jinxed, a huge target gets put on your head. Not literally, of course, but it's hard to miss who's the last guy to be jinxed when you see a giant crowd of people chasing one dude. The map is just a little too small, doesn't allow for many opportunities to lose your pursuers, and overall would probably be better if players were split up into 1 or 2 more teams. 17. Tiptoe. A free-for-all where you have to find the path to the end. Not all the craft singles are real though, so you will fall right through them. Fake platforms can shake, but infrequently enough that you don't have enough time to wait for every last slice of cheese. This one is mostly luck, but the fact the platforms can shake and you can follow in others' footsteps makes it at least a little fun. 16. Royal Fumble. One of the final games. Essentially just tail tag with a better map and less people. These two seemingly small changes makes Royal Fumble much more enjoyable than tail tag, although it still suffers from the same issues as the other tail games, like the fact you could kind of just hang out and do nothing for the first half of the game, and then start actually playing once the timer starts getting close. Royal Fumble in particular, I've noticed likes to end with everybody in this giant dog pile, passing the tail off every other second. When that does happen, it's not too much fun. However, games that don't end this way prove to be some of the more exhilarating rounds in all of Fall Guys. 15. Team Tail Tag. Tail Tag except in 4 teams. The team with the least amount of tails gets eliminated. The round's biggest strength is the map itself. It's open, but there are multiple ways to access all quadrants. Also, given it's a team game, and you do not want to grab your teammates' tails, Team Tail Tag devolves into senseless mosh pits far less than the other 2 tail tag games. 14. Rock and Roll. One of the more clever games. Rock and Roll sees 3 different teams rolling their colored ball through an obstacle course. The last team to get their ball to the end is out. I think it's a little excessive having like 10 people on one ball, but the strategy with this one is to have the excess players run ahead and get ready to push back the other team's ball. It's hectic, a little BS sometimes, but overall not bad. 13. Fruit Shoot. You're racing to the top of the mountain. All the while you're running against conveyors, and even more problematic, giant fruit flying at you. Some of the bigger fruit can be a little unpredictable. I mean, you will have games where big piles of fruit will just come toppling over you, but for the most part, you can see the fruit in advance and predict how it will fall before it comes at you. My friends absolutely hate this one, and while it's not a favorite of mine either, I wouldn't say it's bad. 12. Fall Ball. Fall Ball is soccer, like straight up. There are 2 soccer balls, and getting a ball into your opponent's goal scores you a point. They mix it up a little with footballs, and one time I even saw a gold egg that was worth 5 points, so that was pretty crazy. I used to really like this one, but lately it seems to pick this one like every other game, so I've become a bit more critical of it. If there was a lower player cap, I probably would have ranked it higher, but a lot of the games I have done will have 8 or sometimes even more people on each team, and that's really too much I think, because it's hard to feel like you're contributing to your team in any way when you got 7 people jumping at the same ball from all angles. The number of soccer balls should scale with the number of people playing, otherwise cap the player counts at 6 people per team. 11. Seesaw. A race level that sees players trying to balance on weighted seesaws. People really seem to hate this one, and while this map is flawed in a couple of ways, I don't think it deserves all the slander it receives. People who use the argument of, you don't like it because you're bad at it, is the most non-argument ever in my opinion. But in this scenario, I think that might play a part in people's distaste, because Seesaw seems to be one of the only levels where you can make multiple mistakes and still qualify. If you get knocked over to the side on something like Hit Parade, it's basically over. But the majority of people seem to have such a hard time with Seesaw that if you fall out 1 or 2 times, you'll probably be okay. And if that genuinely is the case, I got a few tips for anyone struggling with this one. The biggest tip I could give you is to never jump if you don't have to. The longer you fall, the more likely you are to trip when you land, so minimize that time any way you can. Second would be to be patient. Just because you can theoretically make it to the next seesaw from your current position doesn't mean you should. When a seesaw is tilted to one side, you never want to land on the lower half if you can avoid it. And thirdly, always take the middle route if possible. It allows you more options and is safer due to that. If I were to make any suggestions for Seesaw, I would say add some raised platforms in these sections where you have to wait for other players to balance the scale, because you just end up waiting there, and other players from behind you get to take advantage of you balancing the seesaw. All the while you continue to wait there. If there was a raised platform over on this side here you could access when it's tilted up on the outer edge like it is here, the additional route, even if it's longer, would result in both sides of the seesaw having value, which would prevent situations where you just have to wait for a bunch of players and hope oncoming players don't undo the work you're doing. Even though Seesaw is pretty flawed, the hate I see online for this map worries me because I think it has a solid foundation that should be expanded upon. A level that dynamically changes based on player input is a really cool idea. Hopefully the Fall Guys team doesn't take the hundreds of people yelling about Seesaw on Twitter as a sign they should never try anything like this again, because I personally think they should. Number 10. Fall Mountain. One of the final rounds. Race to the end and be the first person to grab the crown. It's not bad, but being a finale makes it much easier to point out this level's drawbacks, because when your win is on the line, any little hitch is going to stand out way more in your head. I bring this up because the falling yoga balls feel like a much greater problem in this map than they would be otherwise. Losing the lead because you can't angle the camera that high and having a ball land directly on top of you once you've already reached the top doesn't feel good. Again, this wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't the final round, because something small like that wouldn't lose you the game, but here obviously it does. If you make even the tiniest of hiccups, you might as well quit the game right there because it's over. If they had the yoga balls coming out of chutes like they do in Dizzy Heights, I think this would make the map much better, because in that scenario, if you get hit by a ball, that's on you because you saw it coming, versus this where something out of your camera view sporadically falls from the sky and lands on top of you. Overall, it's still a fun map, but I personally would have liked it more as an earlier round. 9. Rollout. A survival game where players try to outlast their opponents on top of a rotating cylinder. Another simple game, but solid nonetheless. It'd be cool if either the obstacle layouts were a bit more challenging or the map started at a faster speed. Things start so chillax in the beginning that your biggest obstacle is the other players trying to take you down with them, which should be a factor of the game. But when your biggest obstacle in an obstacle course isn't even the obstacle course, yeah, you could probably step it up a notch. Number 8. Block Party. A survival game where walls come flying at you Beat Saber style. Survive until the end to proceed to the next round. To my knowledge, Block Party is the only round so far with a few different layouts. There was one I did where walls in the shape of a U would come at the players, essentially encaging them to their doom. That one was probably my favorite. A simple but fun game, and the different variations add a lot to Block Party's replayability. Number 7. Hit Parade. A short and sweet race to the end. Given it is one of the easier maps, most of the players are going to have a pretty clean playthrough to the end. What this ultimately means is that if you slip up on this last part with the wrecking balls, getting knocked to the sides, it is over for you. They even make you take a walk of shame up a ramp and start from the very beginning of the segment all over again. Overall, it's short, sweet, and fun. Number 6. Jump Club. So people have been making a lot of comparisons between Fall Guys and Mario Party, but with Jump Club, this genuinely feels like a fully realized version of Hot Rope Jump from Mario Party 1 and 2. So you got a green beam rotating clockwise you need to jump over, but then you also have 2 pink beams spinning in the same direction you need to contend with as well. The trick is to try to position yourself where you will jump over the green beam and not into the pink one. This game is really as simple as it gets, which is why it's impressive how not only fun it is, but challenging it gets. I should mention there's a final round version of this game called Jump Showdown, which looks super sick, but it's not a part of this list because despite being in the game's files, it's inaccessible as of now. Please come back. Also, I love when my video becomes outdated before I even upload it, because just recently, they added Jump Showdown back. So in that case, Showdown is 6th, Jump Club is number 7, and move everything else I already talked about up 1. Number 5. Hexagon. It appears that this is unanimously agreed upon to be the absolute best final round, and for good reason. It's creative, it's challenging, and it has just the right amount of player interaction BS to be engaging. So there are several floors of hexagon tiles that will disappear when you step on them. So the whole game you are constantly moving trying to buy your time. Where the player interaction comes in is that you can cut off other players to force them to jump or change directions. It plays a bit like Snake or Tron bikes in that regard actually. The only difference being that you can jump over gaps if you are skilled enough. This one is great. The best final round. Number 4. Dizzy Heights. A round 1 or 2 race with a fair amount of variety. You start off running along grounded spinning frisbees that branch out to several paths. Then you're dodging yoga balls rolling down a hill. After that, you come to suspended frisbees. The platforming here is really fun because your momentum will carry when you jump. You won't die if you fall, but it's a pretty hefty setback. The round concludes with you dodging more yoga balls on 3 final frisbees, and a hill to the finish. So yeah, there's a lot going on here, and for the most part, it's all skill-based. A really good stage. If I had to nitpick, this slope right here before the last 3 frisbees feels a bit cheap because there's actually a hole here that you can't see. It's not a huge deal since once you play the map once, you'll remember that gap was there, but it does feel a bit cheap. The only other thing is the yoga balls coming from the cannons at the end. You cannot angle the camera high enough to see them when they're way up in the air, so you can get completely bodied like this guy and lose the game. Nitpicks aside, Dizzy Heights is still one of the overall best maps. I'm always down to play it whenever it shows up. Number 3. Gate Crash. Another race stage with walls that alternate moving up and down. It might be jarring to see Gate Crash ranked this high, but I don't know what to say. I have zero problems with this one. It's simple, but super solid because of that. Outside the limited player interactions, there is no nonsense to this one. No falling balls or fake walls, just raw skill. Stuff like barely making it over a wall thanks to a well-timed dive is extremely satisfying. But I think what really makes this round for me is that last jump. Sliding down slime that boosts your speed and then diving over that final final gate just feels great. And people seem to be really bad at timing it for whatever reason, so this stage is basically a free win. 2. The Whirligig. A race to the end revolved around rotating objects. Despite the map being centered on this single theme, they were able to adapt it into several standalone segments that all feel unique. Probably the coolest thing about this map is all the risks you can take. Like at the end here, there's a middle path that is near impossible to get through due to how fast the propeller spins. You can be a safe gamer and just take the side paths, but if you do take the middle path and pull it off, it saves you a hefty amount of time. Or even at the beginning, you can take a risk and let these propellers hit you from behind to give you a boost forward, but it really is a risk, because they can just as easily fling you back. This map is all about either taking risk or playing it safe, and I love level designs that can be this dynamic in the ways that you can approach it. And the number one best map is... Number 1, Slime Climb. Without a doubt, the best map in Season 1 of Fall Guys is Slime Climb. So much variety, easily the most difficult, just a raw test of skill as you race others to the top. I appreciate the difficulty in this one because you can start a match with all 60 players, but then by the end, you're left with like 14 people. Rounds that can knock out that many players without having to rely on RNG or teams are rounds that should be commended. I mean, you got moving walls that push you off, dodging yoga balls, conveyor belts and hammers, the dreaded macaroni, and capping it all off with a nerve-wracking bit where you have to dodge moving obstacles and especially other players on slippery-ass slime. The diversity and challenges they came up with, and how seamlessly they were able to string them all together is impressive. The Fall Guys team did a great job with this one, and that's why Slime Climb is the best round in Season 1 of Fall Guys. And that's the ranking. I was pretty critical of a lot of these, but realistically, the game is so fun to play even with the weaker maps. So check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you again for Fall Guys Season 2. Also devs, if you're watching this, please separate the costumes into more categories. I mean, the whole point of winning is to get season points and coins, and the purpose of those is to get more cosmetic items. Given dressing up your guy is such a big part of the game, just having a top and bottom half for costumes feels really restrictive when you can split it up into shoes, pants, torso, gloves, hat, you know. Anyways, thanks, bye. Hey, thanks for watching! Next video will be Jackbox 2, I swear. I'd like to give a huge thanks to my patrons, such as Abby Knutson, Aiden Ross, Amanda Guth, Asher Lehman, Cashinator, Jeffrey Long, John Hancock, Miles Mann, Nips Caps, Praetorian Mars, Rami Batter, and Sonic Caddy. Thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.